castle that we see. Out of the 5 rooms they had, the first one had a gate, because those kept in this room mostly were seen to be the aggressive ones, and most often they were those that were kept in chains to make sure they wouldn't be fighting officers. Even in their weak state, some would still want to fight. Others would also team up to escape from this place. But then these ones were not brought back here. Rather, they had a special cell for them that would visit later. The male dungeons. Question, comment, if you have any, you let me know. If not, we go this way.
What's up, everybody? It's Big Lad saying we have 10 minutes more to get to Cape Coast Castle. So we are still heading there. Stay tuned. We'll give you more information at the Cape Coast Castle. Damn! Ah!
You need to shop. You need to shop.
I think I need to eat salad. I need to eat
You need
salad.
to shop food.
Seriously.
It's my
Oh God. I need salad. My next meal should be salad. Because oh no, my English.
Where your mind go now? You need to bring her back. Your mind dig far.
I'll be taking salad for my next meal.
Chop eti.
Yeah, I'll eat eto. Nah, I think it's because of the eto. That's why I'm not able to speak the English well. I'm struggling to mention certain words right now.
That's crazy, man.
That's crazy. I don't know why.
That's scary, bro.
Welcome to Cape Coast. Today is going to be my first day in Cape Coast Castle. Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories about the castle, but I've never been there physically to see how things are. So it's a great opportunity for me today to have a feel of what exactly goes or what exactly happened in this castle during the decades. Yeah, so when you come to the castle trying to film, that's everything here with the charges, and that's going to be 250 Ghana cedis for filming, as in making a video.
No, not here. There, outside.
Making a video, that will be 250 cedis. So you gotta make your 250 cedis ready to be able to film. And you know, we are filming everything, so we need to make payments. So we are currently done with our payments, and the next tour begins in 10 solid minutes. So from then we can start to get our tour of the Cape Coast Castle. So we are currently waiting for that 10 minutes to reach, then we start our tour.
I'm going to be your guide. So if you have any question, comment, or contribution, you let me know. But I must say the history here is very traumatic and emotional. The most important aspect is the lesson we have in here. We first would have a look in the male dungeon. We talk about the graves over there. There's a condemned cell before we move upstairs to see some of the offices and apartments used by the Europeans. Everything should end at the door or the gate of no return. This is the Cape Coast slave dungeons. Others do call this place Cape Coast Castle. The structure that we see here happens to be the third and the smallest castle that was built by the Europeans when they came. The coast of Africa, we do estimate about 60 forts and castles to be built here. Just that Ghana alone had almost 40 of them, which was all because of gold. And that made the Portuguese name this region as the Gold Coast. Nigeria, Benin, Niger, and a section of Togo had the name Slave Coast, because that was where most of the West Africans actually were captured from. So areas like Cameroon, Grain Coast, Ivory Coast, and the others got their names based on the resource that they were getting from the lands. A lot of these Africans moving from Nigeria, Benin, Niger, having the forts and castles here should tell us they were walking. And mostly I do use Accra or Kumasi as my reference. Imagine if today you were asked to walk from Accra to this place. The journey and the struggle before you make it to this end. But then this time around, some had to walk beyond the borders of present-day Ghana. A lot of them died, because coming in, wild animals might attack some of them. Some had to get drowned in rivers. Tiredness, sickness, and hunger could also kill them. Making it to the castles, because of the journey they were taking, they created resting points. In Ghana, mostly we call them the slave markets. So from the north down to the south, a lot of them do spread. The largest being Salaga from the north, and then down to the coast, the most popular one is Asin Manso, which is just 50 kilometers away from this place. Over there, they had a river, and that was where most of the captives would get their last bath as Africans. They give them food to eat to regain some strength. Beard and hair is to be shaved so they look younger for the trade. Shea butter will be smeared on the skin, and the purpose of the butter was to heal their wounds and also make them look attractive, because they were bringing them here to be auctioned. Inside this place, they had a section called the Palava Hall, and over there, nurses, doctors would examine them to know their strength, group them into domestic and commercial captives. Domestic ones were those to work in the castle, commercial ones were those to be exported. Right after grouping them, they would exchange them with commodities such as guns, gunpowders, mirrors, drinkables like rum, sugar, tobacco, and other things that you might have heard they were using for the exchange. Right after, they moved them all to the courtyard for them to be branded. And with the branding, they set fire, would place in metals that had their embossed designs underneath them. So a metal, seen red hot just from the fire, moves into an oil, from the oil to any part of the body they get stamped. So it could be the chest, shoulder, back, or the arm. Some had their captives pierced with tags like earrings, and others were given metals like anklet before they separate the males from females. So all the males are moving down this way. Closer to the door or the gate of no return, the females will stay to await the ship. And whilst in the castle waiting for the ship, you work. So the structure that we see here, to credit to the English, but then the labor work happens to be the enslaved Africans that were staying in here. I made mention that a lot of forts and castles were built here. Out of these numbers, only 3 were castles, of which the first ever European structure to be built on our land is the St. George's Castle. Popularly today we call it the Elmina Castle, built by the Portuguese around 1482. The second is the Christiansborg or the Osu Castle, built by the Danish around 1661. And the last is where we all find ourselves today, the Cape Coast Castle, also by the English, around 1664. Out of these 3 structures, Cape Coast is the only castle that was built purposely for the transatlantic slave trade. So when you talk of castles, this is the smallest and the last castle that was built. But when you talk of dungeons, this happens to be the biggest dungeon ever to be built in Africa for the transatlantic slave trade. The trade actually took place in 3 continents, which was Europe, Africa, and then the Americas, which lasted for 300 years. And it was around the 1500s when the Europeans had got into the New World. Plantations like sugarcane, tobacco, cotton, coffee, and others got established. The natives from those lands were subjected to work on the plantations, but then the hardship was killing them. They were introduced to disease like measles, pox, influenza, syphilis, tuberculosis, and others, and they were natives of the land, so easily they could escape from the plantations. A Catholic missionary with the name Bartolomeo de las Casas suggested Africans to be used, justifying that Africans were much stronger and that the African system could withstand both tropical disease as well as their European diseases. And looking at the climatic condition in Africa and the work we were doing on our lands, mainly agriculture, it was similar to what they expect us to do out there. So moving the Africans to the new place should be of their best advantage. The then Pope was by name Pope Nicholas V, and he also had the palpable or the decree signed to actually commence with the trade. In here, they had different ways to get Africans. Some were raided, kidnapped along the coast by the early Europeans themselves. Some were brought in here as a result of tribal wars and frictions we also had on our lands. Some also got convinced, or some would say deceived, that they were to be given better lives if they joined them to the New World. But then once you get out there, whatever they promised you here is not what you are probably going to get out there. The trade doesn't end in Africa, because after moving them from this place in the New World, plantation owners would exchange them with sugarcane, tobacco, cotton, coffee, rice, and others. The raw materials are sent to Europe to be transformed into finished goods, and all goods are moving back here for the cycle to start all over again. That gave us the triangular trade or the transatlantic slave trade. So basically, that is the system. If you have any question, comment, or contribution, you would let me know before we have a look at what happened down there, because a lot is to be seen down there. If you have now no question, please you join me this way. Watch your steps moving down there. Please, your torch, flashlights. Alright, so the dungeon those days had no light. Once brought in here, the 3 holes that you see up there serves as their source of vents and also a place to give them light. The male dungeon is divided into 5 chambers. The first, second, third, fourth, straight down to the 5th one. And the estimate we have in here, each room that we stand when fully loaded could hold almost 150 to 200 of them. Because mathematically, they do say about 700 to 1,000 humans should fill the 5 chambers. So divide them by 5, we're getting the numbers I'm talking of. But I get to know they were raided, they were kidnapped, hunted through warfare. So they themselves were not counting them. So there's a possibility, it might not be as I'm saying, or probably might exceed what I'm even giving in. Once they were brought into the dungeons, they expect them to defecate, urinate, sleep, and sometimes eat in the same dungeon. So imagine yourself alone, eating closer to your old poop, but this time around, the whole place filled with mess. A lot of them got sick, because keeping just this number in here, communicable disease easily would spread amongst us. Aside that, the unhygienic condition would add to the illness. Cholera, malaria, fever, diarrhea, and others. If you were to die in the dungeons, they wouldn't give you any befitting burial. Bodies would be loaded in sacks, cannonballs would be added to give it weight. They dump all these bodies into the ocean. So the sea out there happens to be mass burial for a lot of the Africans that died in here. If we look on the floor, we'll probably get to see some trenches or drainage systems here. Serve as passage for waste in here to move into the sea. When it rains, by the direction of the wind, and as heavy as it is, sometimes we come in here. So through these beds, they move down and out of this thing. Domestic captives would also come in here to clean the place, but then they were not doing that on regular basis. Before they come in, some might have stepped on the poop and other staffs making them stuck on the floor. So what they could get from this place, they do so. The rest will be covered with sand. And over the years, they created layers in the dungeon. 1974, which happens to be the same year, this castle was opened to the general public as a tourist site. We had some group of archaeologists from the University of Ghana. They got this place excavated, discovered the bricks as the original floor of the dungeon. So samples were taken from this place to their lab. They got them tested. The results that came out proved that from the second down to the fifth chamber, please, I wish the three of us would move in this way. As well as the smaller portion they left over there happens to be the toilet, the vomit, the sweat, the blood, the food particles, so things that humans are to excrete and eject from their system. With sand, food, and blood is what we see here. We walk on the other chambers. They left them unexcavated just to serve as a proof, so that if you don't believe, you could also get samples to test as to whether they contain aliens or not. Once a captive was brought into the dungeon, the expectation was that he would stay in minimum just a day, but the maximum he would stay here almost or over 3 months, because until ships were ready, we definitely wouldn't make it out of this dungeon. So if we're lucky to get in today, the ship comes the next day, we move with the ship. But if unfortunately the ship leaves today, you get in the next day, you have to wait for the cycle to end. And there's no exact time that the ship will come. Depending on the issues that will probably happen on their way, determine the time ship will return. And even today with propellers, sometimes it might take a ship about 2 weeks before it comes to this end. So imagine sailing from this place to the Caribbean before it moves to the Americas, the northern side. From there, we'll have to move to Europe. From Europe before, we'll come back this way. So probably might take a ship, let's say half a year before they return, of which they'll probably stay in. But then they wouldn't keep them in the dungeons always. Sometimes they take them out to get them active. That is why I said they used the Africans to build the castle that we see here. Out of the 5 rooms they had, the first one had a gate, because those kept in this room mostly were seen to be the aggressive ones. And most often they were those that were kept in chains to make sure they wouldn't be fighting officers. Even in their weak state, some would still want to fight. Others would also team up to escape from this place. But then these ones were not brought back here. Rather, they had a special cell for them that would visit later. The male dungeons. Question, comment, if you have any, you let me know. If not, we go this way. So please, I'm coming forward a little bit. Alright, so we stopped here all because of this hole. Because above this section of the dungeon, moving to even the second, happens to be a church. And the name of the church was the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel. SPG, that is the same church today we call the Anglican Church or Church of England. Before you enter the church, move out of the church, whatever that was going on in this chamber, you would smell, you would hear, and get to see it from this room. So if you are closer, if you look up there, you see the gate to the church. The same way you probably can see them there up there, they could also see them here. They smell, but they still preach loud your neighbor as yourself up there. And the truth of the matter is that I always say I don't actually have any problem with any religion, but Christianity those days was never introduced to the Africans for their salvation. It was one of the tools they used to enslave Africans. And when they came in, this is not the only place they were doing this. Almost all the castles have the same system. If you visit Elmina Castle today, you see the Catholic Church right above their slave market. The Dutch took over Elmina Castle, and the Dutch were part of the Protestants, so they didn't want to use the Catholic Church. The church they built was right above the female dungeons. You visit Osu, the Presbyterians built their church above the female dungeons. This castle had the Anglican Church up there, Wesley Methodist at the forecourt, and if you came from Accra, I'm sure you saw Fort Amsterdam. Amsterdam is also having a church up above the building. So most of these churches played vital roles in the trade. And as well, some of them, just as they were operating here, also had plantations in the Americas that they also feed Africans over there. At a point, this same place became a school. The school was not for purely Africans, neither purely Europeans. It was made for the mixed race. The kids that we had with the blacks were those they were educating out there. Today, it no longer serves as a school nor a church, rather operates as a library. When you get to the church, you'll see it for yourself. If there is no question, you join with this one.
Did they establish this place?
No, I said it was only the first chamber excavated. Please go back a little. Alright, so I made mention the first chamber was excavated, leaving the other four. Looking at where I stand, spreading to the next chamber, you could see some traces of bricks. What it is telling us is that if we are to excavate this place, there should be bricks, probably filling the whole space as we saw in the first chamber. So whatever you are standing on, you probably could guess. The toilets, the vomits, the sweat, and other things that they left in here for us. If you look closely, you see the bricks actually moving on a straight line, telling us from the top of the bricks, everything here happens to be human waste, which is almost about 3 or 4 inches. So imagine the African staying down here, how high the waste probably would have been. And I'm sure it wouldn't be this solid. The more softer they were would produce heat and sickness in it. Please, the last chair. Please be square. Some will go this way, others will come this way. So some will stand in front of others because the place is small. So in terms of height, you can probably stand in front. Alright, so this happens to be the last chamber, and this place was also used for the selection of the captives. The condition in here wouldn't make all of them fit to make it out. So when ships were ready, those seen extremely weak were kept at the extension over there. The rest were grouped in chains or ropes. They forced them through a tunnel that connects this place to the door or the gate of no return, about 65 to 70 meters away from this thing. It's unfortunate we wouldn't go to the tunnel today, because in the year 1834, Captain George McLean, who was the administrator or the president of the merchants, was asked to block the tunnel, symbolizing the English ending slavery here. But practically, they were still smuggling them until 1860. And I'm saying 1861 because historically the last ship left Africa from Benin to Alabama in 1860, which was the Clotilda ship. So telling us, though laws have been passed, but illegally some still possible. Even Maclean himself, that was assigned to block this place as the overseer of this place, he was still keeping captives, and for that, a committee had to settle his issue somewhere in 1842. That was why they took him off and brought in a new person by the name of Commander Hill. So records are there proving that he was still keeping captives. Blocking the tunnel they had here should also tell us this was not part of the tanking system. Because if there should be an opening, this thing wouldn't be there to block them. The land we stand on was actually a sacred place for the natives. They would come in here to worship a deity they call Nana Tabi, which was in the form of a rock. But then having given the land out, they were asked to leave the place. So they took samples of the rock they were worshipping to the town. The castle that we see here was officially given to Ghanaians in 1960. That was when Ghana became a republican country. And 30 years after 1973, they brought them back. So today, those that still believe in the traditional system, they do come here to worship. That is why the man is seated there with the things they use for their prayers. If you look on the other end, you see reeds like this. They were brought in by visitors like yourself. I made mention you down in here, the body moves into the sea. But we are of the belief that their souls are still here. So when you bring them, we don't litter around, rather places like this, we keep them to honor, respect, and remember the dead. So when you see them anywhere, we say the sea purpose. Question, comments, if you have any, you will let me. Yes, please.
Yeah, so you made mention that they worship at the top, they are Christians, right? And they still have a stone where they
No, so the land was a sacred place before it was given to the Europeans. So when it was given out, they left because we can't be here whilst they trade. So the castle was given to us, they brought it back, which was going to return. Okay. So it was not in when the Africans were still, because I said it's a tunnel, this comes in. So please, yes, ma'am. Any questions? All right, so please then we move to the next place. So once they had blocked the tunnel, symbolically they had ended the trade. But remember I said even though they had blocked it, still nothing was keeping them out. So then they wouldn't use the tunnel again, rather take them out. Alright, so the plaque we are seeing here was unveiled in the year 1992. The chiefs in Ghana actually brought this plaque to render an apology for Africans' involvement in the trade. Because whatever be the case, Africans also got themselves involved. Whether it was one or two, they still had a role there. If not for bringing captives in here, some as well gave them lands to settle for their comfort to go to trade. So render an apology and also remind us so we don't forget what happened here. It reads, in everlasting memory of the anguish of our ancestors, may those who died rest in peace. May those who return find their roots. May humanity never again perpetrate such injustice against humanity. We, the living, vow to uphold this. So a living being, if you wouldn't want yourself enslaved, then never get yourself involved in any slave activity. That was why they brought this. The other one is about Barack Obama and the wife when they came here 2009, July 11th. Please, let's have a look at the courtyard. Alright, so this section of the castle was a graveyard for some of the officers. The place was excavated 1996 and only 4 graves were left here, all because they were the only ones that had inscriptions as to the person buried underneath. Out of the 4 graves, this is the only African that was buried in the castle. The name Philip Kwaku, but originally he was Kwiku Ejiri from this town. His father, Ogunbonkweju, was one of the middlemen that were buying the captives from the slave market. So his role got his son a scholarship. He was taken to England at the age of 11. England, he was baptized into the Anglican faith. He got the name Philip, and also his name Kwiku got anglicized to Papa. That made him Philip Papa. Age 24, he became the first black man to be ordained as an Anglican priest after completing Oxford University as a theologist. And today, even in Oxford University, they still do celebrate him. Age 24, I said he was ordained. The following year, he was brought up here. So he came to serve this castle. So right up there, he served as a priest, head teacher, and an interpreter, whilst other Africans were staying beneath him. And one person here can't dictate what should be done in the castle. He served this castle for almost 50 years. The role that he played in the castle got him the befitting burial over there. But in Ghana, Philip is well known for Western education. Because it is said at the point treatment for him here was very poor. Salary itself was not coming. So mostly in the town was where he would commerce to feed himself. Through that, he taught the natives how to read and write English language. So the first basic school that was built during this era has been named after him as the Philip Papa Boys School. Age 75, 1816, he died. They buried him here. These three are all Europeans. First one is by name C.B. Whitehead. Whitehead, we don't know what actually killed him. As of today, some do say he was shot by a Dutch man. Others do say malaria killed him. He was 38 when he died 18. The middle is a lady, Letitia Elizabeth London. London was here to visit the husband, and barely 2 months she was found dead in the husband's room. When she died, rumors spread she poisoned herself, because she got to know the husband, having stayed here for almost 8 years, was an African mistress. Some do say the mistress rather came to the castle, posed as a maid, had her poisoned because she also wanted to take the husband for herself. Others do say none of these two, but rather she had malaria. She was 36 when she died 1838. Recently, I was also reading an article that also states something saying that the lady might have been poisoned by the soldiers in the castle. All because, Letitia's husband was the governor. And when she came in, she got to know that although they had blocked the tunnel and they were still keeping captive, so they probably might have killed her just to cover up what they were doing here. Because she was an author and a poet, so probably she was reporting and she was evil. So as of now, we don't know what killed her. The last one is the husband, and the husband is very popular in the Ghanaian history. The name George McLean. You remember I just said he blocked the tunnel connecting the fifth chamber to the floor of no return. The judicial system that we use in Ghana, present day, he's the one that introduced to us. So the first Western court he established on our land is right up there, named after him as the McLean's Court. Through that, he designed a lot of treaties. And in Ghana, the most popular one is called the Bond of 1844, which was the same bond that laid foundation after the 430 years. Age 46, malaria confirmed killed McLean. That was 1847. So 46, 36, 38, 75. These are the graves that we have. So there is no question. You have a look. Yes.
You mentioned the year this place was put up. Looking at it currently, it looks like it was really made up of solid stuff. So did they bring the materials we built this place up with, or they got it from here?
So some were from this place, others were imported. So bricks, they manufacture some here, they brought some from England. The rocks are all from this land because they can't carry rocks outside. The binding material, some they get here. The oyster shells, some also they got outside. Some of them were burnt. Palm oil from this place, sand from the seashores in the African label. No, so these two things that you see there were storage tanks. I mean these two. They harvested rainwater from the roof of the castle. So they connected pipes to get water to feed the captives. So drinking and cooking from these wells or tanks, they get water. Today we no longer harvest rainwater again. Rather, we've connected pipes to them. That when we short from the town, we can still get water to use here. And we don't drink from them. Rather, we use it for restoration works and flushing of toilets. We don't. So please, let's see the condemned cell over there.
The real deal.
All right, so we stand in front of a condemned cell. The cell we see here was designed for the male captives that were fighting for their rights. Remember, I made mention in the dungeon that some of them would want to fight officers, others too would want to escape from this place. Doing that, you were seen to be rebellious, so they wouldn't send the rebellious ones back to the dungeons. Rather, in the presence of other captives, they got them beaten before they moved them into the cell. 3 doors would block them. In there, no food, no water, no air, and no light. So you get dehydrated, you suffocate, and then you die. But then the sad aspect is, let's say about 5 or 10 of the captives were sent there. A soldier had to stand at this gate to keep an eye on them. He'll be checking to make sure all of them were dead. So if I walk in and realize out of the 10, only 7 were dead, I wouldn't take them out until the last person was dead. They lay all these bodies on the floor for other captives to see, so that next time, if you also want to repeat the same thing, remembering what you saw on the floor will deter you from escaping or fight them. So it was more of a psychological way to control the other captives in the dungeons after they moved the bodies into the cell. But in this place, as we see, this hole was also a cell, a guard room for the soldiers of this castle, the Europeans. So when you are into drinking, doing things that we're not allowed to do in the castle, they keep you here for some days. Food is served, but then after you serve a day or 2, you go back to your normal duty. But the African, fighting for the right, moved to the other chamber that had 2 extra doors, like this. In this castle, all doors and windows you are to see have been restored, with the exception of this one. So this is the only original door we have left. So if you lose this door, that means all the doors here are not original. Please, watch your head and join me inside. That is why today some do prefer calling this place the room or the cell of no return, because you enter as a living being and only dead body is going to be taken out. I wouldn't want anyone dying in here, so please watch your head.
One out, one stool out. That's cool for you.
Anji.
The Swedish took over the following year. The Swedish built a fort here, stayed in for about 5 years. Danish from nowhere came in, fought the Swedish. Danish stayed here almost 2 years. The Dutch came in, fought the Danish. Dutch stayed here for about 3 years, and the English also fought the Dutch. So when the English took over, they expanded the Swedish fort into a castle. They stayed here for 296 years. The English knew enemies would fight them, so they were fully prepared to protect their gains. So if you look all over the castle, you'll see heavy metals, the cannons with their balls. And mostly, if you visit the English forts that they built around in castles, you see most of these things, although others had the same, but the English had a lot of them, all because they wanted to monopolize the trade. When these weapons were erected, they also built 2 forts to keep an eye on the castle. So if you look up on the hill, you'll see one of the forts over there.
Oh, okay.
The white building with the red cap. It is called Fort William, which is on the east. And there is one also behind this Anglican church called Victoria. So William and Victoria, soldiers will be up there. They will see any group coming from the land and any ship from the sea. When they do so, they signal those in here. In the morning by waving flags. In the afternoon, they use a reflection of mirrors. In evenings, they use torches indicating enemies approaching. So the soldiers would get to where the cannons are, put in gunpowder, place the balls at the mouth, lights the match, straight into the enemy ship. Water goes in there, it sinks into the sea. And that helped the English surviving for the 296 years. Because they came 1664, they only left our shores 1960 when Ghana became a republican country. And I'm even talking of the time they built this, they came to this land, not to Ghana, but then Gold Coast, because they had been here before, they even came to build this structure. Everything that we work on till we enter the governor's room is still original. I mean the marble stones and the pitch pine wood. We have them from those days, from till now. We go this way. All right, so we stand inside the governor's living room. In here, I need not to say much, because we've all seen the dungeons and we saw what the captives actually were going through down there. This place is for the governor, only one person staying here. The breeze coming in, the view of the sea, the lighting system, the space to which he stayed alone should tell us he was enjoying up here. And aside having a living room with 9 windows, he had his bedroom with 5 windows, his corridor also with 2. So all over he had 16 windows, which would help him get about 360 look all over. In the dungeons, if you actually took a good look at the size of the vents for the captives, they look similar to this. Of which this whole thing actually is half of the window, and this is 6. The whole male dungeons, there is only 9 down there, of which this, a complete one, is 12. So probably if you multiply 12 by 16, the governor had about 192 smaller holes for himself, whilst 1,000 new ones were sharing just now. Just have a look at the bedroom before we move to its reception. This one.
Government enjoyments. This is government bad.
All right, so we've seen the living room and the bedroom already. This was the reception area for the governor. Here he received visitors. They do their drinking and entertain them in here. The smaller chamber over there was the personal office. So one person, once appointed as the governor, would have an office, a reception, a living, and a bedroom. Underneath us, starting from where the lady stands, it extends a little bit out, happens to be the first chamber of the male dungeon, the second, the third, which is the church over there, the fourth and fifth move this way. Just that when you were up here, you wouldn't hear anything from the dungeons because of the thickness of the wall. But in the church, whatever went on, like I said, you smell, you hear, and see. So please, let's see the church. Were you with us in the 90s? Were you with us in the 90s? Were you with? So remember I pointed up saying you see, you smell, and hear. So you remember what is the name of the church? And if you're listening. That's good. We stand inside the Palava Hall or the marketplace. Remember, I made mention from wherever the Africans were brought from once they got to the castle. There was a place where nurses, doctors would examine them, group them into domestic, commercial captives. Then the merchants over there to, according to your physique and as well your strength, they do exchange you with the gunpowder, the mirrors and other stuff they had up here. After the exchange, all the captives are taken downstairs for branding. The castle actually was controlled by the Royal African Company, just that Liverpool, Bristol and other individual merchants were in here. So once you buy yours, you do mark them for identification purposes. This same Palava Hall we stand is where some 8 coastal chiefs also met with Commander Hill, Captain George McLean, and some 2 other English officials to sign a bond of 1844, which was the same bond that laid foundation for our colonization for the 113 years. So if you see anywhere where they tell you that the bond was signed at Formina, it is never true, because the English would never leave their jurisdiction and as well take Fantis to an Asante land to go sign a bond which has nothing to do with them. So it was this castle where they signed it. But now others are saying that it was at Formina. Just that the Treaty of Formina is different from what they got signed in here. The floors, the ceilings, the doors and windows have all been restored. Just that we try to maintain the old design that we had. The only thing we came to meet here happens to be at the edges. You see some black ceilings there. Apart from the black ceiling, whatever you see, including the walls, have all been restored. These are not. Only the windows and the windows, the doors, everything is restored. Everything. So if you have no questions, let's see where the governor was staying after receiving the serious grounds. Section of the castle, including the ground floor, was the barracks for the soldiers. The soldiers stayed over there, used the meadow as their canteen. George McLean, I made mention, introduced us to the way the Europeans settled disputes. So the room from this end, stretching to where the window is open, was actually a court room, and it was introduced to us around 1840s. Around that time, the tunnel had been blocked, indicating they had ended the trade here. So they got this place converted to a prison for the Africans. And it was a prison from 1840s until 1992. That is about 33 years ago. That was when they built the Ankafo prison. So they moved them from this place to Ankafo. And this is not the only place that operated as a prison. James Fort, Asher Fort, and Omabo were all prisons, just as this place also the same. And today, as you can all see, a craft shop. So it was first the garrison, became a prison, and now a craft shop. The middle part, which was the canteen for the soldiers, is now a coffee shop, so still serves the same purpose. The business or the trade here was very profitable. I'm talking of the human trafficking aspect and the gold trade. So if you had gotten a place and you don't protect your end, because the sea was coming in from that direction. So those days, the European soldiers, probably one would join them through the tunnel. Others would stand up there, coming out down, I'm sure you saw those 2 holes. So they just stand there to make sure they will come back. They command them, the next person counts them, making sure the same numbers from the dungeon is the same group coming in. Then they use this end. But then because the sea was coming in, they blocked that door and created a new one overhead. The smaller chamber here was a female punishment cell. The males got condemned, but the females were punished. Majority of them being punished were those that were resisting rape. European merchants here will not come with their wives. So whenever they want to satisfy themselves sexually, inside the female dungeons, they pick any lady of their choice to abuse or rape. If you were brave to uphold the little dignity you had in here, they will punish you. The punishment is to stay for some days so that next time, if they come back to pick you, you will go in. But not all of them were also willing to stay in the cell, because the dungeon itself was not easy. not to isolate and bring them in. Once you open up, they move you upstairs, wash you and take you to bed. They will bring you back. Because of the delay of the ships, some got pregnant. When they see you pregnant, they wouldn't put you in the dungeons. They take you from there, take care of you so you give birth. After delivering, the mother is allowed to take care of the baby for some months until they see both mother and baby fit. They separate them. The mother is brought back for the next adult to take it from this place. Because get to know, before you were raped, someone had already purchased you. So you belong to a particular group. They bring you back. The babies were for them. These babies, they had nannies. Nannies were the domestic females. They take care of them so that when they grow, they bring them to the church. So remember I said they brought some mixed race up there. Majority of them was as a result. The nannies were the domestic slaves. They were not Ghanaians, but the domestic slaves because they were from different tribes altogether. So they take care of them. When they grow, they bring them to the church. During and as well after the trade, some left this place. Others also stayed behind, got mixed up in the communities. That is why today, if you check most of our coastal zones, we have a lot of European settlers. So Accra and Volta region, we hear names like Morgan, Van der Boy, Van Dyke, Wales, Wolves, Brown, and others. Yes, and others. And if you come to Central region, Western, you hear names like Smith, William, Wilberforce, McCarthy, McLean, Swansea, DeGraff, and others. A lot of them happens to be descendants of the mixed race. Others also corrupt and adapt names as well. So that is it. Please, we proceed on this. All right, I see. All right, so this is the female dungeon, and the female dungeon had two separate chambers. One in here, the other is also directly opposite us. We estimate about 150 or less of them staying here, the same numbers over there. In the male dungeons, you could see that there's a bit spatial, but I said there is 150 or more. I think I'm saying 150 or less, because the females was not as many as the males. And the condition in here was similar to what the males had. They would defecate, urinate, sleep, virtually do everything in here. But in the worst aspect, we all know only females do menstruate. So imagine if you were to stay in for more than a month and no officer moving in here to pick you to rape you, that means the menses will be on you. So imagine the infections, the pain, stench, trauma, and others. You die in here, the body moves into the sea. The main reason for them adding the females to the trade was for them to reproduce, to give birth. And they could also multiply the numbers of the slaves once they got into the new world. So that was the main focus. Their source of vent here, an extra one over there, as well as behind. It's just that it was blocked with bars, so you could see the holes of the bars still there. We rusted out. Let's see the last place, the door of no return. All right, so the door or the gate of no return. This is not the original door. Because originally, if it was made this big, I'm sure at night a lot of them will probably run off.